Greetings all, welcome to Everything Borrowed, where we sit down to share stories and have conversations with entrepreneurs to artists and everyone in between. Today's episode is powered by Blake's Hard Cider, 100% fresh pressed, all natural and gluten-free, straight from our family's 75-year-old farm in Southeast Michigan. Find us in your local grocer or have Blake's direct ship to your home by visiting blakestore.com. Use promo code EverythingBorrowed to receive 10% off your first order. Must be 21 years of age. Please enjoy mindfully. What's up, y'all? My guest today is Jessica Cohen, founder of The Product Agent. What is The Product Agent, you ask? It's the first of its kind online platform that puts brands in direct touch with the TV and film industry decision makers. Have you ever wondered how those brands get on TV? Well, most likely they call Jessica Cohen. Jessica's vast film and TV experience combined with her innovative marketing strategies and entrepreneurial nature have made Jessica one of the most sought-after liaisons between brands and Hollywood. Insiders have dubbed her the product whisperer. I learned a ton from this podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? You're out in New York right now, right?
Yeah, well, I'm in Connecticut, actually, but
you are?
East Coast based.
Okay. Are you're born and raised East Coast, and do you do a lot of traveling?
Yeah, in New York.
Okay, got it. And I have to imagine, being the product agent, which I'm super excited to talk about because I actually, as, having a growing alcohol brand, I see certain brands that get placements. I've always wondered, I'm like, how the hell do they do that? And then, and then I come across you and I'm like, they probably go to Jessica and she probably works out a way to get them into, various movies. But, I wanted to kind of start, at the origin spot. How do you get into a line of work such as yours? Because it seems very unique and it seems like something you almost have to fall into to a degree. So I'm super fascinated to hear kind of how you get into this.
It's really specific and definitely unique. So I grew up in upstate New York. So it wasn't the city and there was no film production at the time. And it was very much farm country, which I think a lot of people don't realize about New York, that it's, if you go 2 hours outside of the city, it's all farms.
Yeah, it's like it's like Apple centric, outside of Washington State, Michigan, New York's like right there with apples. So I'm very familiar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I grew up among all the apple trees. And then I went to college at UMass Amherst, and they had a program where you can make your own major, which is just like the best program ever.
I love that.
And I had no idea this even existed. And I like to talk about it just because when people are going to college, like probably a lot of colleges had this, and I didn't know. And so I was in communications because I knew I wanted to do something in media, but I didn't really know what.
Right.
I had a few cousins that were news anchors. So I guess I thought like, oh, I'll be, maybe I'll be a news anchor, which is like the farthest thing that I could ever imagine being. But that was the initial thought. And at UMass, the courses were just like so massive. Like these big lectures, and I couldn't get any of the film classes or the communication classes that I wanted. And it was just not good. So I found this make your own major, and I decided to major in educational film and television production because you basically work with a faculty advisor. And then what happens is you get to choose any of your own classes. And so you essentially make your own major, and whatever classes you pick, they have to give you because you're in this special major. So it's like the best. That's
amazing. Is that specific to that university? Is that a thing that's growing?
I don't know because
I
went to school years and years ago. So now I feel like, because I definitely felt like reflecting on it all, that it was a precursor to just even being an entrepreneur, where it's you're taking your education into your own hands and making a case for why it's valid for you.
Yeah. You're also kind of co-authoring your future to a degree because you're putting your own fingerprints on what it is you're leaning into or you're studying. Whereas some of these prepackaged majors, you're going through the rubric and you're kind of just following the lesson plans, and it doesn't really make you have to think about how you're going to apply.
Exactly. And also just to give you freedom to pick courses that you wouldn't normally choose, like ones that are more like creative or just push you out of your comfort zone or do these things rather than just kind of suffering through.
Right.
Yeah. And so in my senior year, I built into my major an internship for a whole semester. And I did have a cousin who was in the film business. So that's how I kind of broke in, and he was like, I can help you get an internship. My friend who's a producer is working on this little movie in Massachusetts, and maybe you can get on that. And so I was like, okay, I'll call her. And I called her, and then she's like, yeah, I think we have some room for interns. So come to the film set and meet with the production office to see if if you can get this job. Because you have to usually, in the old days, know someone to break into film, but
Sure.
you still need to earn the job. Like they're not just going to be like, oh yeah, work here. And if you're terrible,
right,
because it's too hard of an industry. So I get to that film, to the production office, and like on the wall, I see 20th Century Fox. And then I see like the cast, they have sometimes the cast pictures up, and it's like Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder.
Right.
And I'm just like, where am I? Like this is not a little film. This
Yeah.
is 20th Century Fox. And so I got very lucky that was my kind of first entree into film and television production. And then from there, from that internship, I was working every day, like 6 days a week, and just took it as like a real job instead of just like an intern where I'm like, I'm here for 3 hours and I'm going to leave. You
Right.
really work hard and you put your hours in. And then after that, I went back and finished up college. And then I started just getting film jobs from those connections that I had made on that first movie, and just continued to work in the film and television industry on the production side for about 8 years.
So you were grinding on the production side of the film world for...
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was handling, towards the end of my career in film, I was handling a lot of the product placement. So that's how this, how it brought me to this company.
Sure. And so, for those of us who, us hillbillies from the Midwest and others who have no idea, about how, Hollywood works and, product placement. I mean, there is a whole strategy and philosophy, right, on how products are placed into films, and, who decides that within the film process, and how do those decisions get made? Because it has to obviously fit with the times, fit with the feel of the show. Yeah. So that, I feel like there's a whole conversation to have around that. But, the Cliff Notes version, how does that work?
So there's a lot of different ways that it works. My company, I think, works differently than a lot of other companies. So I'll just kind of take you through a few of the different ways. So one way is, it's called brand integration. So that is more when a company comes to the producers, or the producers reach out and are like, okay, we have written into the script that it's going to be a beverage, and, do you want to pay to have your product in the show?
Got it.
And those fees, can be anywhere from a very small, like independent movie from a few $1,000s to most of the things that we work on. They're like multi-digit integrations.
Right. We're talking hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars.
Hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. Yep. And that type of integration, a lot of times that money is not spent just to be in the movie. It's also used for marketing outside of the movie. So basically, like, you agree to do a digital campaign afterwards, promoting the movie and promoting the placement or something like that. So sometimes it's not always just paying to get it in the show. Sure. It's paying to kind of attach yourself after. But that, I would say, makes up about 2% of products in movies. And so I think the part that most people don't understand is just how the whole film process happens, and how there's so much opportunities for products to be in these shows. So sure. We capitalize on that part, which is kind of how, just when I was in production, I was like, I don't like the way this is done. Like, I don't like marketing agencies pushing products on me that are not a fit for our show, and then sending them to me, and then telling me, like, have you taken pictures, and what's going on with this, and like jamming this down my throat when this isn't even, I didn't even request it. Sure. So the way that we work, again, just, it's all based on those years spent in production, is we look at the different creative departments that are on a film. So for us, those creative departments are the costume department, the set decorating department. Well, that's the art department, but under that would be set decorating, props, and then and production design. And then there's hair and makeup, and I feel like I'm leaving someone out, but essentially, like, we focus on those different departments. Yep. Are our key people. And each one of those departments is responsible for products that you see. So everything you see on a movie set or a TV show is all placed there.
Yep.
So like there's nothing that's by chance. And usually what happens is um, those people that I just mentioned will read the script, start developing the ideas like what does this character look like? What type of drink would they be drinking? What
Right.
kind of candle is in their home? Like all the way down to the tiniest detail. It's all really thought about. And then after they're kind of on the same page with the directors and the producers, then they go out and start acquiring all of that stuff. And so
Got it.
they acquire it either through renting, purchasing, or through product placement. So a lot of times product placement is just you knowing like this movie is going to start up and you're going to send them a few cases of hard cider and see if it's going to work for them and for that character. And it's really that simple. And that's the way our company works. It's really about helping the production people understand like who even wants to work with them, because on a production there's so little time. Like they don't have a lot of time to reach out to tons of brands.
Yeah.
And so that's why sometimes you'll see like over and over some brands being used on certain shows.
Because they're just easy go-tos and kind of they're it's low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And so that was going to be one of my questions. Is your client, and it seems like it might be a kind of a yes to both answer, but is your client on the production side, or is it on the product brand side? It seems like it's a little bit of both, I'm sure.
It is a little bit of both, but I guess client is usually who's paying you.
Yeah, I guess that's the definition, right?
The brands are paying us.
Right.
So the brands would really be our client, but it's funny because sometimes I feel like such a jerk because we're really strict about just how we work with the production people, because at the end of the day, we're there to serve them.
Yes.
And we're there to make sure that their life is being made easier. And if we can do our job right for them, then our clients are going to get a lot of placements. And so it really works hand in hand, where we're always like, I jump through hoops for our production people, even if it's not one of our clients, will still try to source for them. Or if I know a brand, even if we're not working for them, I'll connect them, like whatever I can do to make their life easier. And I think it's just because I was working on set and I know just like what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah.
Well, I feel like your experience has given you a unique perspective into how to navigate these relationships, because you never do know. I've, not that we've done it, but I've always been like, do you just send your products to people that you hope find them interesting and it just gets picked up? But there's obviously more intelligent ways to go about it.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong in thinking that. The relationship, a relationship does help.
Yes.
If you know somebody on set, so it's not just a random thing. But if you also know the show and you're like, well, this would be a great show, and then you can find the right address of who you would be going to, who it would go to, and then you send it and it's right, they're going to probably use it. So that's. So
I want to take a step back for a minute. You were 8 years in the film industry. You kind of jump off. How long ago was the jump off into becoming the product agent and kind of setting up this new venture? And what was it like at the start, as opposed to where it is now, whether it's, volume or number of clients or revenue, however you want to describe that. But what's been that journey, since you left, however long ago to begin this venture?
It was a long time ago. It was in 2002. So it's a very long time ago. But I had another company at the time with a business partner, and it was a little different. It was still product placement, but we were focused only on jewelry, on fine jewelry. And so our company was an agency for fine jewelry and for the fine jewelry industry to help them get their products both in press. So she handled the press side, and then in film and television. And then we did a lot of work for the jewelry industry as far as like representing their trade shows and helping do branding and marketing in that luxury industry. So that company with the business partner lasted for about 8 years. And then since then, I've had the product agent, where it's mostly, we try to be more digital, and we've expanded by digital meaning web-based and a platform, building a platform to connect the brands with the production people. And the difference is that we're not only jewelry focused. Now we've really expanded into every different type of category, because the system that we use of educating the production people on the different brands available and then making it easy for them to access those brands really works. And it doesn't just work for jewelry.
Sure.
But your question about how is it changed and grown other than the categories, it's a constant learning. I mean, building a business is full of a roller coaster. And this year more than ever, because the whole film and television industry just shut down for the first time in my lifetime for all of those months. And, there's been so many changes just because of COVID that it's really been a whirlwind. But also just, I think, trying to just building a company is not, I don't know, it's not for the faint of heart. You have to really kind of stick in there and understand like the failures are as big as part of the story, I guess, as the successes.
Navigating, pre-COVID, I mean, were you traveling to Hollywood and LA a ton? And I mean, are you kind of living two lives, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast? I mean, is it, was it all of that? And I imagine that's changed and probably that will come back. But I mean, I have to imagine that you resided often in LA and in the West Coast.
It was funny because I didn't always, like when I had the agency with my business partner, we went to LA probably twice a year, but it wasn't as much. And then in the past few years, because I do have 2 children, so I would still travel, but the past, I would say like 3 years, I started going to California a lot more, like maybe from maybe like twice a year to like 4 to 6 times a year.
Sure.
And sometimes I'd even just go for like a long weekend if there was an event or something. And that really had such a positive impact on the business, because the film industry still is so relationship based. And so if you can be there and talk to people or do the podcast in person and, it's just, or hold an event for people or show up at people's events, it just makes such a difference than now. But so I was doing a lot of traveling, but it wasn't always like going to set, because going to set, while I did go to set quite a few times to see people, it's still like, it's hard because everyone's working. And so you're always like this weird person on set, like, why are you even there?
Right.
And it's like, oh, great. Good to see you. Okay, thanks. Bye. And then you're like, I'll see you later. Bye. And so I definitely, over the past few years, I don't know. I think the other part of the set thing is when you do work in production, you're left with like a little bit of set trauma, because it's a really, even though it's like this fun environment, there's this level intense. Of stress.
Yeah, right.
And also like it would be akin to if anyone has gone to summer camp and then like you just walk into summer camp.
Right.
Like 10 and no one knows who you are, and they're like, who's that person? Why are they there?
Right.
And you're not dressed like everyone, like maybe you're wearing like jeans and everyone has shorts, and you're just like, you stick out because everyone works together day in, day out.
You're popping into their world.
Days, and then like, who are they? Why are they here? And if your cell phone rings, like you're going to get yelled at, so if it's not yours, you're like, it wasn't mine. So there's this like trauma.
Right. One of the things I wanted to ask you as well was, how do entrepreneurs know if their brand's ready for the big stage, and if they are, what would be the process or the thinking process that, we should go through to, say, hey, we want to get our products out there more. We want to get them, in front of people in these different mediums. Is there a way of thinking or approaching that other than calling up Jessica Cohen and saying, what can you do?
Yeah, definitely call me.
Yeah.
I'll help. Yes, there is. I think one is you can be strategic, but again, I think it's like in every other career, maybe, or maybe not, because digital marketing, I don't know if this is as relevant, but it's about relationships. And so the film industry is still relationship based. And that maybe it's going to change eventually. I think it's open for change, but I look at it and we've been successful because our relationships matter. So it's not like, oh, I just want my my product to be on this one specific show, I think that's kind of short-sighted. I think you need to understand that the people working on that show, so for like if you wanted, let's say, your drinks to be in an actor's hand and they're drinking it on screen, like that would be the best placement if it's the lead drinking it on the screen, right?
Yep.
And so that's kind of the hero placement that everyone's looking for. But to build that placement, you need to have a relationship with the prop master. And so you have to first even know that there's a prop master.
There's a prop master. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the prop master is who is responsible. So it's kind of knowing like who's who in production.
Sure.
Which you can find out and you can Google, but it's hard. It's like all of those end credits are actually humans.
Right,
right. Forget. But the prop master would be who's responsible. And if you get it to, let's say, the costume designer, they could still say, oh, let me give this to props. But really, you want to get it to the prop master. So after you get it to the prop master, let's say, that prop master in a given year could work anywhere from like 2 to 6 or 7 different shows. So there might be an opening on a show that you have no desire to send products to because you don't feel like it's the fit and,
right.
But the prop master is like, oh, can you send me products? So if you say no, like your chances of the next one when he's working on that show or she is working on the show that you want are much less.
Right, right.
Like, here you go. So I think it's kind of the key that I always say, like, how do you know you're ready? You know you're ready when you actually have a product that you can send out almost freely to production, because production, again, unlike even an influencer or a magazine editor, depending on the scene, they might need cases of it. They might need and again, it just depends on what your product, because sometimes if it's a beverage, you're like, of course we'll send cases. But if it's like, I don't know, sometimes people don't want to send that much.
Right.
But if you think of the way production's filmed, like they might be opening that can of something or that bottle 10 times for that scene.
You're right.
Then after opening it, then in another scene, they show it like opened and emptied out. Or
Got
drinking
it.
it.
Got
So
it.
there's a lot of resets. So you really have to kind of be, if you can be, and again, it depends on your product, generous with your product and have enough and not have it so like tightly held.
Got it.
So I'd say that those are like the times that you know that you're ready. So I always think you're better off going deep into a relationship with 1 or 2 people versus, oh, I'm going to send it around to 100 sets or 20 sets.
Right.
And then, not get as much leverage for that.
Got it. And one of my other questions was going to be, you've been at this a long time. Do you have a particular product placement that you're the most proud of, or one of your, one of the biggest, placements that you were able to make? Because I know you're rubbing elbows with the stars and all the, all of Hollywood. So I'm curious if there's anyone in particular that you're super proud of, thus far.
It's interesting because I asked my husband, I was like, I bet you they're going to ask what my favorite placement is. And it's so hard. It's like asking like, what's your favorite child?
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially doing this long. I really think I'm proud of, rather than just one placement, of the system that we built, that
Sure,
it's like,
that's a great answer.
That I can stand really confident in like, this system works. And we've had placements on like every, from Beyonce to like Nicole Kidman to, I'm trying to think of like other big names, Sarah Jessica Parker. Like if you name the celebrity, we've probably placed something on them or on one of their shows. And I also really love the fact that some of our brands, like we work with Swell water bottle, and Swell, we started working with them like probably year 2 of their business. And so just seeing those placements over time and knowing how like those early placements were really exciting for them, and knowing that this helped kind of build that business, and seeing businesses really kind of go from unknown to more known and getting their foot into doors into retails from the placements versus.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That was going to be my next question was, have you had an experience where you've taken a brand from kind of obscure to known, and, what those brands have been? Obviously Swell, seems to be one of them. But that has to be kind of a very rewarding part of the business, to try to take an unknown and make it known and be part of, bringing it into the culture kind of.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just been fun to see how we've done that with a lot of different jewelry designers. But then there's been sometimes makeup companies, or I love kind of when I very first thought about the business, it was to help smaller brands that were lesser known connect with these big opportunities and these big shows. And so that's kind of always where my heart lies. And
Sure.
I try to help as many businesses as can connect and get these things. It's always hard because there's a lot of marketing now where it's more guaranteed, where it's like, if you send this to an influencer and you pay this money, then they're going to post, and you have this expectation of what it's going to get.
Right.
And so that's kind of always the challenge, I would say, of what we're doing, is it's more just organic and you don't really know. But it has been impressive seeing how the brands, once they start doing this and the more they get known in film and television within this community, then the placements and the opportunities start arising more and more. So it becomes more like, right, on the show, they're going to start calling you because you are used. So definitely
Got it.
That's one of my favorite things also, is just seeing how you take a brand that really wasn't known within a community, and then all of a sudden, every movie or show, people are requesting them. And you know that you kind of did that. That happened to me this week with one of the brands, but that's not overnight. It takes sometimes years. 6 months or a year.
Right.
It is years. I mean, I kind of wanted to sound timely, but it can be years, but it pays off in I can't even tell you how big it pays off.
Well, I think that there's just something to be said as we lean into more and more digital. I believe that these types of marketing are key levers that companies can pull to try to really engage with and interact with it at a deeper level. And it's getting creative with your brand and your company. And I think that's for me, it's a very interesting thing to consider about how do you approach that as a part of your marketing, I guess call it strategy. Maybe it's a huge part, maybe it's a small part, but, building that into, part of the way in which you take your brand to market and you try to reach, because I think brands are always trying to reach, a cultural relevance, and sometimes when you're trying to break out of a region or a state, with your brand, what's a better way to break out and to enter the culture, if you will, than, being, presented in Hollywood. I mean, honestly.
And the other thing I would add to that is, lesser known brands have almost more opportunity than well-known brands, because when it becomes a well-known brand, a lot of times the productions will want money in exchange, or the celebrity won't want to hold it because they're like, I'm not doing a Budweiser ad, or I'm sponsored by this other thing. And so when it's a lesser known brand, they don't always know, is this a prop or is it a real brand? And so they don't really even think about it. They're just like, oh, the prop master's giving it looks good. Fine, let's go. And so you have a lot more opportunity. You also, on a network show, for example, they, depending on who their advertisers are, don't like a lot of product placement. And so we hear that a lot, oh, well, NBC doesn't do product placement. And we're like, well, our brands aren't really the normal product placement. We're not going to give you Frito-Lay. Here's this organic chips that are made by a small maker. And then they're like, oh yeah, these are probably fine. And, so it's those little kind of tricks and just understanding, also that can help out in that. So I would say, as part of your marketing mix, I always think it's just part of it. And then if you're seeing success, then you can make that bigger. But I never think, and this is what always is so surprising to me when I talk to brands, it's such an accessible form of marketing. It does take a little bit of work, and it does take products. So you really have to be willing to send those products out. But for the return that you can get, and like you said, reaching a wide market within popular culture of being on the show that everybody's watching, even if it's for 1 second, but then you grab a still of that, your audience really gets excited when they see you on their favorite show, and they can feel like, oh wow, look at that. That's so cool.
No, it's fascinating. Honestly, the whole world you live in, and what I've learned from this conversation so far is, fascinating to me. And I think there's a lot more to uncover there. And I definitely, I don't know if we're at the place now, but I would love to work with you as it relates to Blake's, because we've talked about it internally for years. You'll see certain.
That'd be amazing. We'd love that.
Well, we'll make it happen. We'll do it, after the show. Because we've said it, and honestly, I just I consider myself, halfway decent at understanding marketing, and we've always kind of kicked around. We're like, how the hell do they do that? Like, are they just paying like these shows X amount of money? Like, you didn't really know how certain brands were getting their products in there, and I think that it's an education thing. So for me, knowing that there's someone out there, Jessica Cohen, the product agent, that can help our brand and other brands reach at least reach the prop master and see and then from there,
or the set decorator, and maybe you want to send it to hair and makeup just so that when they're breaking,
why not, right?
every celebrity's drinking it and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this is so amazing.
You're right.
That's the thing. It's like trying to understand as a brand just kind of all these different opportunities, and then you always get to decide as a brand which ones you want to take advantage of and which you're like, nah, not so much. And production people really do understand that. I always try to say, like, just before you say no, look at who you're saying no to. Right. So just do a little, we help you, but also like, just let's look at their credits and make sure that, they haven't worked. If Brad Pitt's your person you want to get on, like that they haven't worked with Brad Pitt on 6 other things just because they're not right now. So it's trying to be strategic in those areas, but then that's one of my biggest things. The other thing, what you were saying about Blake's, and I don't know as far as merch what you have, but merch is a whole nother way, because with the costume department, if you have really cool t-shirts or cool hats, you give them to that. Yeah. And then if it's the right character, they could be wearing that. So there's a lot of ways that you can kind of, it's subliminal, but nothing that you see on screen is actually subliminal. It's actually very impactful as far as branding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think we could talk for hours. I did have one final question for you, and I didn't know if this was a product placement thing or a complete accident, but this summer there was that Starbucks cup that got onto Game of Thrones, and it was like, you see like this medieval setting, and you see this damn Starbucks deal. Do you think that was secretly paid for product placement, or do you think that it was an actual accident?
I think it was an accident. I think that production people are humans.
Right.
And I think that, somebody didn't do their job well, and that they just didn't, because they're on set and like they're drinking Starbucks and they have
moving
the coffee
fast
or
and doing that whole thing.
Or it could be an actor that had it. I don't know. I think that it was uncovered like what had happened.
Okay.
But again, at the end of the day, that's somebody's job to just make sure like the set is clear and everything's
I didn't know if that was you, pulling out all the stops to get Starbucks, on Game of Thrones.
I don't think Game of Thrones would allow that. I think that's the other thing. It's like most of these shows take their production so seriously, and especially like a Game of Thrones. So that for them of breaking that reality of like what it was is just never like a brand. I don't think Starbucks could have paid enough money to make that happen.
That was just a lucky accident.
Yeah, it was very lucky.
Oh, that's funny. Well, honestly, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to follow up with you after this because when you all hear this podcast and you see Blake's Hard Cider on the big screen, you'll know who did it. It's Jessica Cohen of the product agent. But thank you so much for coming on.
Creating a great product.
Yeah, well, thank you, and look forward to to building a relationship with you and talking further. But thank you so much for coming on. And if people do want to get a hold of you and reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
They can follow me on Instagram or Clubhouse. Well, I guess Instagram, and all of my rest of my social is just at the product agent.
Got it.
Or they can go to theproductagent.com.
Okay, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. We'll talk soon,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. You can find Everything Borrowed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Show your support and drop a 5-star review to help more people find our channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and everythingborrowedpodcast.com. EBP is produced by Chelsea Cox, Jason Brown, and Vox Adams. Edited and filmed by Nick Ferguson. Art is by Adam Yarborough. Everything Borrowed is an after-hours media production. Copyright 2021.